Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Arts to Hearts podcast. This is your host, Charuga. How are you doing? Welcome back to another episode. I don't even know what number of episodes this would be, but I'm sure we're getting very close to our 100th episode. And I'm so excited because, when I started this podcast, I told myself that, I'm going to give myself a challenge of making it up till 100 episodes. And then I'll see if I like this or not. And even if it feels hard, I'm going to go that far and see how it feels. I'm very close to that challenge. And honestly, podcasting has been one of the most rewarding creative things I have done. I've always said on the podcast, I love women creators. I love the conversations so much that I get to learn and share with all of you. I think I don't know, it's just not the 100th episode. From here I feel like I want to see myself on my 500th episode. How fun would that be? And it's just not number of episodes. It's like we in the past year I have had conversations with over 60, 70, probably more than 70, 80 artists, and that's such a huge experience for myself, and I love that. So I really wanted to share this with you, because it's not only me, but that means you have been with me in this journey, and we are going to soon be 100 episode club, which is very exciting. If you have some ideas on how we can really celebrate this milestone and how we can make this special, you let me know. Now, coming to today's episode. Today's episode, I have Hilary Doyle. She's an amazing artist, an amazing teacher. She was also the co-founder of NYC Crit Club. And it was so fun talking to her in this conversation. She was very honest, humble, warm. And we spoke honestly, she was also very different from a lot of artists I've already had on the podcast. Her work is very different, how she's inspired from commuting when she was making the work to now living in a small town and having a mother, and how her immediate surroundings have informed her work. How I also love how she shaped her work around her life and has evolved around and along with it. That's been such an amazing experience talking about her work, and what inspires her, how she has taken up those challenges and turned them into opportunities for herself, for making more work. And it was such a fun, humble conversation. She's such a warm soul to even talk to. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode. And without any further delay, let's get into the episode now. Welcome to the podcast, Hilary. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Firstly, thank you so much for coming. I think the first time I heard your conversation was with Erica on I Like Your Work podcast. And since then I think we've been having a lot of to and fro, and we decided a good time, and I'm so glad that we finally made it. So thank you.
Totally. Thanks again for meeting me at 11 o'clock. So nice of you.
No problem. Okay, before we get into this conversation, Hilary, can you introduce yourself for people who are listening to this episode? Who you are, what you do, where you come from?
Sure. My name's Hilary Doyle, and I live in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm a painter, and sometimes I make sculpture and digital drawings. I show my work with Tamer Grane Gallery in London, and I also am a teacher. I've been teaching at Rhode Island School of Design, Purchase College, and I also helped co-found NYC Crit Club with Catherine Haggerty. I don't run the program anymore. I've helped Catherine with it for 5 years, but now Catherine runs a program, and I still teach one class for it every semester. And I think, and I'll talk more about Crit Club later.
Yes,
but basically I'm a teacher and an artist to make it shorter.
That's so nice of you to so humbly say, but you've done a lot of things. You've really taught a lot, actually. I was just going. I Before this, I was going through your work and everything, and I was like, oh my god, that like you've done a lot of teaching.
Yes, yes, I love teaching. I think it's such a wonderful, inspiring, probably like the podcast, just a really great way to talk with artists. And I feel very inspired by my students, and I hope that I inspire them. And I love the way that making art gives me ideas for teaching, and teaching gives me ideas for art in a really fluid way. Like I'll be studying something like egg tempera for a class I'm teaching, and it'll come into my art in a certain way.
Oh
And I
wow,
think that can be
yeah,
really fun.
absolutely, yeah. That's such a good point because I think. Do you think teaching also evolves your own practice?
I do. I do. I think so. I try to make whatever I'm teaching evolve my practice, even if it's not going to naturally be in there. Like I taught a winter session class at RISD, and they said I could do whatever I wanted. So I chose things to study and teach about that were like these surrealist rubbings by Max Ernst. And I got some books on it and did my own research. And I think whatever I like the lifelong learning sort of idea. So like even at
I
Crit
love
Club right
that.
now, I have this class called the Studio Visit because I wanted to know like how are people doing Zoom visits now, and what's the contemporary best practices for a studio visit, because I'm doing all these Zoom studio visits and it feels really new and different. And I feel like I'm already learning a lot from, you mentioned Erica. Erica was just a
Yes,
guest, and I feel like
I
I learn
love
a
that.
lot with my class, and I hope I'm also teaching them things too that I've learned along the way.
I love that. Yes, and the idea of studio visits. I also did studio visits, which was pretty successful. Like a really fun project and a very loved project during the pandemic, and it was strange, but it was
Mhm.
such a new way to do things and still
Yes,
be like still learn and explore in spite of the
absolutely.
restrictions.
Yes. Just gave a new way to meet with artists, I
Yeah.
think, on Zoom.
Okay. Let's start from the beginning. I know that you were born in a small space, and today your work is about middle class commuting travel, which I think probably also happens in a lot of like metropolitan city where people travel for long distance. A lot of the traveling, public travel. Firstly, I want to know about your early experiences of growing up in a smaller space, and have you observed the same details that you observed today, and how have you transitioned from that place to here, and how that has happened in your work? Too many questions, but probably in the
No,
same branch.
it's good. I Well, so it's kind of been a back and forth because I was born in Worcester, Mass, which is a kind of small place in comparison to a big city. Then I lived in New York for 12 years and recently moved back uh,
Oh
to
wow.
to Worcester just in the last couple of years in the pandemic, since having our baby here. And so I've sort of gone back and forth, but this idea of being inspired by what's happening in my regular life. So before it was kind of commuting to teach, I was commuting all the time from New York to Rhode
Yes.
Island to upstate New York for teaching. And so that time became really important for inspiration for my art. And a lot of, you could see that as a huge obstacle to have like 20 hours of traveling a week. But I just saw it as important studio time. And so now that I live in Worcester, the same thing. I walk my toddler on walks to parks as inspiration. So I'm spending time with him. We collect flowers along the way. So I'm back to this kind of small town place, but you could do this anywhere, major city. And I collect like plants or like moss from trees, and I use that as inspiration for my art now. So I just try to take my everyday life experiences and bring it into my work. I think it has
Like
less to
has
do in a way with the metropolitan area and more with like what's
is
along the
like
way.
a lot of your work has like the subway scene. I don't honestly, because I'm not even based in the US, so I'm even more interested on how infrastructurally different smaller and bigger cities are, let's say in India.
Yeah.
um, the smaller and big city look quite different, because we don't have a lot,
Mm.
like we don't have metro systems in smaller cities. A lot of people in smaller cities don't have to travel long distance because the cities are smaller. There
Totally.
are few places to go. The distance time traveled is shorter. A lot of
Yeah.
your work has like subway systems, people taking like a subway, or someone sitting like a newsstand. Has those visuals evolved since you've moved to a small city back?
It definitely has. Now it's like people in parks and
Yes,
sitting on benches
yes,
in parks. But before they were sitting on a bench in the subway, and so it's kind of
yeah,
there's parallels to the things in the places. But it's true, it's different in that way. There's no subway here, for example. So I felt like
yes,
I couldn't just keep making subway themed art because I have no more access to that. Like I'm not near it
yeah,
anymore. So
yeah.
it became important to switch. And really
Were you
that's
always
changed a lot
sorry?
of
Go
things.
ahead.
And I think maybe being isolated and being in a small town before the work was more about like the everyday and a real kind of place with some imaginary elements. But now I think it's become more imaginary since I've moved to a smaller place. I've been able to delve more into like thinking about maybe this world is becoming something else. Maybe it's not just a park anymore. And now it's a community of women who are reclaiming their own narratives or reclaiming lost histories of women that were buried by patriarchal religions. And I've
Oh
been doing a lot of
wow.
research on goddesses and how every single place in the world used to have a very deep history of goddess narratives. And I'm trying to sort of reconfigure these women as though they're like contemporary goddesses walking through everyday spaces. So it's become more imaginative, I think, since I've moved to a more
Smart.
isolated place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you been always firstly, how were you growing up? Were you a creative child, and were you always like so interested in and receptive towards your environment? Because a lot of your work is informed by your immediate environment today, like
That's
be it
true.
wherever you are.
That's a great question. I found a diary that I kept when I was 8, and it has like little drawings in it of like the dryer or like an animal I saw that day, like really boring things, like just a dialogue of my regular everyday life, like the TV and somebody's like eating an ice cream cone in the picture. It's just kind of just recording like what I was seeing, and I think that does go very far back, and I sort of see that diary as a good example of that.
So that means you were always someone who was, um, I think, picking up on your immediate environment, and that being nice. I think a lot of us, we all consume information and surroundings in very different ways. What you may notice, I may not even notice at all. And what I may be sensitive to may not matter to you or impact you as much. It may to me, like how we all, even if we're in the same environment, we all may notice so many things so differently.
Totally, totally. And also along that question of like, was I a creative child? I don't think I was naturally good at drawing, but I had tried everything, and I got kicked out of dance like when I was 5 because I just wanted to do my own dance, and that's what artists are. I feel like
Yes,
artists want to
yes.
do their own, they have their own way that they want to do. And then I felt like with drawing, I wasn't good at singing. I wasn't good at sports. Like my parents just signed me up for everything. But I took a class at the local art museum. There's a Worcester Art Museum. It's really small. And at first I didn't like it, but then I realized it was something that I could learn to do. So I kind of feel like that's what I love about art. I kind of think anyone can learn how to do it. I don't think it's something that only certain special people can do. I think everyone can do it. You just have to, it just takes a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, and I
But
think a lot of unlearning, because I think the more
mm,
we grow, the stiffer we become. How I think just we've been
totally.
conditioned, and being an artist requires a lot of unlearning for us to let
Mm,
loose. Like
Totally.
sometimes I feel like I'm going back to the same version. Like it's like mapping our journey to our old self, like the knife, like the most organic form of who we were without what before what world told us. Then we became what world told us, and when we chose to become artists, we're mapping our way back to who we
Totally.
were. And it's like a whole thing. I feel like it's such a big challenge sometimes. How was your
Absolutely.
journey? You've taught,
Hmm.
you've come from an art school,
Yep.
you've taught all over the places. Firstly, let's talk about your own experience of of learning and then finding yourself as an artist. What was your biggest challenge in your own journey as an artist, finding
I,
yourself?
that's a great question. I think my biggest challenge was um, finding a narrative that I really wanted to paint. I always wanted to paint narratively. Like I always had a interest in narrative and interest in landscape or different spaces, but it never quite felt right because I didn't know what the story was. But I actually think the subway was the first thing where I was like, this can be mine. Like, I just wanted something where I wanted ownership of it. Like, it was a space that I hadn't seen a lot of paintings about. And I felt like that gave me some freedom where I was like, okay, what would a painting of this space look like? And some of my favorite paintings, there were paintings of the subway that were some of my favorite paintings. You know, George Tooker has such a great painting of the subway, but there aren't very many of them. So I just
Yeah.
felt like it was a world I could start building on because there wasn't something else that looked like it. And similarly, now after becoming a mother, I feel like I have more to make art about and more of a story to investigate. And I sort of see strength in women in a different way than I did before, where I want to like empower women in a new way that I don't think I understood before becoming a mother, but
Hmm.
I think I needed it for my art, but I don't think everybody does. But for me
Everybody
it was
does. Yeah.
it was a big change.
Yeah. Yeah. How has mother being a mother today um, impacted you as an artist?
I think it gives me a lot of inspiration. There's so much against you when you become a mother artist or a mother in any field because suddenly it could take over your whole life.
Yeah.
I feel so lucky because we moved because my mother is here, and in a way, I've gotten to know her better, and um, she's become such an important caretaker for my son. And so, in terms of, oh, yeah, so the question was, how has my work changed? Um, I think that it's it's become more inspired by art, and it's been kind of, it inspires my art in a new way. Like I'll be blowing dandelions with Theo, and I'll think, oh, this can be a really good painting. Or I'll be like bouncing him on a yoga ball in the dark, and I'm like, this would be a kind of funny painting. Like, so it gives me life experiences that, and he also likes to look at things really closely. And I think I always liked doing that before, but you always look crazy when you go up against a tree and just like look at the bark. But but when you're with your toddler, it doesn't seem that weird. You can
Yeah.
look at everything really slowly and carefully, and that's something that's influenced my art as well.
And I think we can all also be so much more inquisitive, because inquisitive in adults, for
Yeah,
some reason, we're always so afraid of asking that stupid question, oh,
totally,
this may be appropriate or not, or what would people think about us? And kids, they don't care. I mean, they don't care about if it's if they, all they care about is what they are curious about, and they're
totally.
no longer afraid to. And I think I love the organicness. I think organicness of what children bring into our lives. I don't have children, I'm not married, but I recently, like, um, we had two children in our family this year, in the past 2 years actually. And I feel like, I think as artists, sometimes we take ourselves too seriously,
Mm,
even though we shouldn't be. We keep saying that. I think
it's
one of
true.
the biggest things I have learned with children around is I have realized, I've learned from them how not to take myself so seriously. Like, and I love what it does to one. And I'm sure when you're a mother, how liberating maybe that could be. I don't know if I'm right or not.
Absolutely. And just being in the present moment. And also, it can be like, it can be liberating because you're inspired by it. And also because you only have a set amount of time. So I only
Yes.
have like some days I only had his nap and like an hour, later. So that time I learned to like make my art a lot faster, and it became more gestural. And I was like, can I make a watercolor in 10 minutes? What would happen? And I think, yeah, so every challenge, whether it's motherhood or anything in your life,
Yeah.
it can become something that inspires you or challenges you to do your art in a new way, which can be really liberating.
But your work, otherwise also you've been very resourceful, I feel like your work with your commuting. I think it takes a huge amount of dedication and commitment to make sure you make out the time no matter what for your own work. And I
Absolutely.
love how you've used that as something that's become an integral part, had become and is continues to evolve into your work. A lot of people a lot of people can't adapt their
Mhm.
practice to their routines.
Yes.
Like you, I know, you made iPhone drawings, and they
Yes.
looked like it I could see that you've committed to making the work, but you've also made sure that if your life has evolved, whatever way you can, you make that adjust to your work. How hard was
Absolutely.
that for you?
I think in a way it made everything easier to, I liked how you put it, adapt to the present or adapt to your current life situation, because I think a lot of times artists mourn the loss of being able to make their
Yeah.
art because of outside circumstances, things in life that feel like too big, obstacles that feel insurmountable, and they make excuses. They say things like, oh, I'm commuting all the time, or I'll wait till the summer when I'm not teaching or
Yeah.
something. And I think that it made all of those moments more joyous to know that I was going to be on a 4 hour bus ride and I could make some drawings on that trip. And, I made a lot of iPhone drawings that only now am I about to like print them and turn them into a physical artwork. But all
Okay.
of that time got used in a positive way, and I was happier with what was a very difficult situation to travel so many hours every week.
Yeah, because a lot of
Yeah,
people would feel set aback because of, let's say your teaching commitment, and they'd be like,
right.
okay, I have commuting and, I can't make
Yeah,
the time. I'd rather do this.
yeah,
Instead, you actually made a work out of that. You actually made a body of work out of that became quite recognizable for you.
totally, totally. Yes. And I hope that people can do that with the challenges in their life. Like, whatever the challenge is, if you can try to find a creative way to make it a positive for whatever you're trying to do in your, if it's an art practice or not. But I think art is very good at adapting because artists are creative.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, tell me something. Now, let's say when you adapted your work when with your commuting, I think basically when you're in the beginning of something, when your work is still getting evolved, hitting, being recognizable, it's still we're in an exploration mode, and we become like, okay, your your work with commuting that had become recognizable. Then COVID happened,
Mm,
and a lot of course, a lot of work that was inspired by travels and your commuting, you were not having some same experiences. And then you also, now you moved to a smaller cities. Did you had those innovations like, oh my god, a lot of my work is now inspired by um, this, and that's how I'm known, and how do I shift my practice? What will, a lot of us have this question like, oh, if what if I change my medium, what if my subject matter suddenly changes, would I not be recognized? How, these a lot of
yes,
questions come up. How what was that for you?
that's a great question. At first, when I was asked to do a show of those subway paintings, I had moved back to Worcester, and the show was an online show for Tamer Grane, and he wanted me to do a few more like 5 more or something. There were about maybe like 15 paintings in the show total in the end. But um, so I did make some more subway themed works because I had ideas for them and I had written them down. And I think that was when it did shift a little. It started to get a little more imaginative in the work anyway, because I had that distance. And then after that show was over, I felt like I could not make any more. I think I made like one more subway painting. But there were always little landscapes in the back of the paintings or hidden in the signs, the subway
Yeah.
signs. So I sort of thought, like, okay, I sort of have this thing in the back of my mind. And I always sort of had this idea that after I had kids, I would do a theme of parks, like to focus on parks as the
Oh,
public space. So even though it's a completely different space, I saw it as a different public space that I'm about to spend a whole lot more time in.
yeah.
And so I chose similarly. I found like the place that I'm going to be a lot is going to be outside. I also felt like I couldn't make work about being inside anymore because everyone was so trapped inside for 2 years. So for me, I just felt
Yeah.
like I want to imagine being outside. Like I do not want to even be in my house anymore. So that sort of evolved naturally, and I'm lucky in that Tamor was fully supportive, and he was like, "These are great." He was into the work, and I think he even said something like, "Artists naturally evolve, and that's really a
Yeah.
positive and good thing, and it's good
Yeah.
to support that and just follow what you're excited about making." So um, I think having that sort of natural evolution of your practice and just following it rather than worrying about, oh, am I the
Yeah.
subway painter forever? And I
Yeah.
painted the subway for 6 years, so it was a long time. And I think,
Yeah, and I think that's also a
everybody
lot of things
changes.
that we're told about now. Like, these are very stereotypical norms, but a lot of us are put into that box. Like, people, artists feel scared of evolving new concepts, and like, they know this is something that works for them, and then what if something else doesn't work? What if we don't find what next we're looking for? And especially where this comes a lot for people who found success in something, and it becomes even harder to challenge themselves and to evolve into something, because that means you're risking of losing something that you already have, but you're also, as artists, we're also hungry about exploring and experimenting, and I think that's our fundamental nature. Okay, tell
Absolutely.
me something. A lot of your work is also like capturing people, right?
Mhm.
It's just not, let's say, a subway. Of course, I've seen a couple of your works which is just subway, but a lot of your work is an environment
Mhm.
interacting with a human.
Mhm.
Um, what I'm really interested in knowing is like, when you're painting and when you're using, like when you're capturing these moments, even if you're drawing or even if you're making those mental notes, like when you make a work, do you like imagine like a narrative, uh, like a narrative that you are also subconsciously building in your mind, no matter what the reality is?
Usually it's a kind of collaboration with the artwork. Like, I kind of learn the narrative a little bit more as I go, or sometimes I'll paint from figures in other paintings. Like I'll find our mother and child from another painting, or there's an Apollo and Daphne painting by Tiepolo, and the Cupid is grabbing the leg of Daphne, and I'm like, oh, my toddler does that. Like this is like my real life and a
Yeah.
painting, and that had its own narrative. But the narrative in the painting started to change, and it could be so many things that she's, trapped between these two people chasing her, or she's, maybe she's trying to save them both, or maybe I'm also interested in how other people read them and what narratives they bring in. But I kind of approach the narratives that way as I go. So I might get an idea for something. Like I was painting this woman with her, she was just looking up. And I was like, what is she looking up at? Oh, maybe the child's on a swing, like up. That's why they would be like right next to her. And that would be
Oh,
just from the painting process, from just asking myself questions as I go, rather than sort of having like one narrative decided before I go in.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're basically also telling yourself stories.
Exactly. And then the interesting thing about the swing one was the next day there was a woman that just looked just like the woman in the painting and the child in the swings next to us at the at the park. And I was like, wow. And and then I got more ideas. So I feel like there's this kind of synchronicity that can happen
Yeah.
when you're being just really open to letting the work tell you what to do.
I'll also love the way, I think I absolutely love your color and drama, but also the fluidity of how you paint and you draw. Your paintings basically look like huge drawings, beautiful drawings. And
I love that.
like, it's like, when also how I relate to it is, let's say commuting, a lot of your initial work, I feel your work also has that motion. Like, when you're making a sketch on the go, you know
Yes.
that you're quicker, you're
Right.
faster, you want to, like, finish it off. And even though these are, and it makes sense when you're making a small drawing, but capturing that emotion on a large scale painting is is very, very, like, I really love that, and it also blows my mind. Like, I really like that motion. How is that something intentionally, or how has that come into your work?
Yes, that's such a good question. I've been trying to figure that out for some time because I make monotypes and drawings and sketches and I'm like, it looks so good here. How do I get that on the big one? And honestly, in the very beginning, I would project them. I took my drawing or my monotype, I projected it on, and I would just really loosely copy it exactly, pretty much. And this is frowned upon, I guess, but I just
Yeah,
was
yeah.
never, in
No.
the beginning, I was not that good at scaling up. It would just be this big struggle
Yeah.
to copy it, the drawing. And I was like, the drawing's perfect. I just need it to be this. And so that was what I did at first. And then later, I didn't need to do that as much and I could just paint it myself. And I was more used to the scale of the marks and how they were. And I kind of liked with the projector too, how you couldn't really see it all as you were going.
Yeah.
So it kind of surprised you a little bit. I mean, I know it sounds like it would be exactly how you'd imagine, but since it's dark, you kind of can't see. You can only
Yeah.
put in big marks. So that was one thing that helped me. Another thing is just I always keep my drawings up and around, and I try to
Same.
practice painting in like a mark that looks just like the drawing. And I try to make my brushes for the drawings are like the exact size to scale that they are in the small
Yeah.
paintings. So I'll use it like a, half-inch brush, and then my brush in the painting is like 4 inches or something
Yeah.
to match the size of the mark.
Yeah.
And I think that helps too with that movement and skill
It also
shift.
is like, even with the bark paintings, or let's say, like, even as mothers, even when you're there, you're constantly in motion, like how children keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Do you think now making those paintings first is on a commute and like then being inspired versus now your work, even though both of them have motion,
Yes.
I think the momentum is very different. The momentum of a commute is very different versus the momentum and the mindset of a mother who's exhausted, or
Yeah.
who's multitasking more than one can handle. Has that also impacted the way you're making your work? Like, because your work is very, um, I wouldn't say like, it's very fluid. I feel like it also maybe captures your own movements in your personal life. Has that impacted now? Changed, evolved?
Absolutely. I do feel like I'm trying to make things in a maybe looser way. Oh, sorry, you can hear a bee. There's Bumblebee in the background. Um,
Not yet.
I've been trying to have things sort of match the fluidity of everyday life. So it's true. I think the speed of my life now has a kind of sort of staggered or layered effect. Like I only have a few minutes, so it's going to be a quick mark here, a quick mark there. And that's how my toddler is. He's like running here, running there. He only has a few seconds. It's only going to be 10 more seconds doing this, then we're going down to somewhere else. And, that kind of motion is really good. And I think in the very past, like maybe 10 years ago, I would kind of overwork my paintings, or I'd like layer them too much, or I'd have
Yeah.
like too much in them. And now I feel like I have more time
Yeah.
between layers, and I don't overwork things as much because I'm trying to get that kind of
Yeah.
fresh immediacy. Also, I've been making these daily watercolors every day, and that helps with that too. Kind of, there's a minimalism in those I like that I'm trying to bring out in the paintings a little bit in the backgrounds or in some of the marks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the
And what
watercolor
about
practice helps.
colors? Oh,
Oh
sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
colors. For color, for like maybe 7 years, I just used like the same four pigments to make, like, all those subway paintings were made with 4 or 5 different pigments, mostly. And they're
Hmm.
weird colors that I get from Gara Paint, which is one of my favorite acrylic paint stores. And they have this color system where you can just take the pigment and the water is pre-mixed, and then you mix it into the gel medium so that it can be as bright as you want, and
Yes.
it doesn't have that kind of plastic. I mean, it's still plastic, but it's, I think, less
Yeah.
plasticky looking than just regular store-bought acrylic paint. It has higher pigment volume, and it's this really great company run by artists. I really recommend it if you like acrylic
I
paint.
will. Oh, I can't. I don't. My equation with acrylics and oils has never been so good.
Oh,
I love
okay.
gouache. I love
And you're doing
watercolors.
collage. So it's collage and
Yeah.
things like
So
textured on.
recently,
I love that.
yeah. So I've been working with oils. I think my first encounter with acrylics was such that I knew that this wasn't me. My first and foremost love has always been gouache, but I've always
Okay.
challenged myself to be more good with oils. But I
Yeah.
figured I've made peace with that I love the naturalness, and I love wood. So I do a lot of watercolors and gouache on wood with, collages and embellishments. And I think it
Beautiful.
also, we all take, it's I think a lot of our work also, like, even when I'm trying to connect the dots for your work, like, um I feel like how acrylics also are such a good fit for the theme of the work that you're doing. um it also adds another layer of the materials that you're using that are coming from a industrial point of view, and the fast life, and, like,
Absolutely. I try to use pigments that are kind of contemporary. Like, there's a whole history of all different kinds of pigments, but I'm using like phthalo blue, which is pretty like I say contemporary because it's just a more recently developed pigment, or quinacridone red, and I use this yellow. It's called quinaphthalone yellow, and it's really a weird kind of yellow that goes back and forth. Um, and I've started using new pigments now, perylene green. Sorry if this is boring for everyone, but I
No,
just
but
love
when you
trying new pigments. It's fun.
no, no, we can definitely learn about that. But when I saw your work, and I've been seeing your work for a while now, what does it remind me of? I don't know if you know about it. It gives me a very retro feel for some
Hmm,
reason.
that's interesting.
Um, and very specifically, I don't know if you've seen Riverdale on Netflix.
Oh, what is it called?
Um, Riverdale.
Oh
It's
no,
it's a series on it's a high school pop vintage series, but it's a very cinematic high school artsy, like, kind of a show. And I if you see the color palettes and the use of color and the mood that they set, I feel like your work is very similar to that time. Like, they
cool,
also add a lot of drama, and, like, LED, the way your color, the highlights, the red highlights, versus dark shadows.
totally.
There's a very mood vintagey, like pop vintagey mood that I feel like, those neon. When I saw that painting, I can't recall the name, but, like, I could think about the neon, those shake shops, because there's one very popular shake
Cool.
shop in that series. So I feel like it's very mood driven. Like,
Totally.
it
And
sets a very
actually,
specific mood.
I think it's really apt that you'd say that, because sometimes I get color palette ideas from Netflix shows, especially crime dramas where the
Oh yeah,
light is
that
really
it's the
weird. Yeah.
Oh God,
So
yes,
I try to
it's a
get that
crime
in the
drama.
paintings. What do
It's
you
a
say?
crime drama. It
Yes,
is a
yes.
crime
Oh, it's a
drama.
crime drama. I was going to ask you. Yeah, it's all
Yes,
crime movies
yes.
that I got
Oh
the color
yes.
from. Because I did, I mean, at that time when I was making those paintings, I was like, everything's a crime all around me. How do I get this feeling into the work, in a non-literal way? So it's funny that you'd say that. But yes, yeah, I'm really inspired by the color and crime
Oh, I
movies
totally
and
get
TV
it now.
shows.
I love that mood. I feel like it's very like I feel that you can feel that drama, and even when there's no emotion, like your work is also a blend between it's fluid and figurative and abstract. Like
Mm,
you wouldn't see the eyes or you, but
yeah,
because of the mood that you said, it's so expressive. The color speaks a lot
absolutely.
about the conversation or the interaction with the elements of the painting.
I'm glad you're seeing that. Yes, I want the mood to come from the color, like less from the person's expression, even because I almost want the person to be like they could be any person, and so you could just
Yeah,
project yourself into like the space. Like,
yeah,
I guess I imagine like maybe the viewer's really the person feeling the feelings in the painting.
lovely. Okay, tell me about NY Secret Club. What is that? I know you're very
Absolutely.
passionate about
Absolutely.
teaching.
Yes. I'm glad you asked. NYC Crit Club is a fantastic art program that has online and in person classes for artists with questions about where they're going to go next with their art. And it's for working artists who have, maybe been out of school or who are looking for community or who want feedback on their work from fresh eyes. And there's all different kinds of classes for all different kinds of ways of getting inspired. Artists in the classes range from 25 to people in their 70s, and it's really
Oh
a
wow.
fun group of people from on Zoom classes all over the world. And so originally it was in person classes. We would go to different people's studios. And at first it was just a small group of people. And then I invited Catherine Haggerty in, and she really, she and I built it together. And it became this bigger and bigger thing slowly over time. And really, in a way, the pandemic um, helped people need community even more or realize how
Yeah.
much they needed it. And so that brought a lot of people into our online classes. And then now Crit Club has in person classes again. Um, Even though I'm not running the program anymore, Catherine has an in person space now that is very beautiful. There's a residency called the Plum Lime Residency, where
Yeah.
artists can work for a month in the space
Yeah.
when Crit Club's not using it for classes. And so it has just inspiring classes for artists who are looking to take their work to the next level, um, as a kind of
It
summary.
also says it also says like learning, alternative learning for adults. What I
Exactly.
was really interested in knowing was what made you start NY Secret Club? Was
That's a
there
great
something of
question.
your own personal experience?
Absolutely. Similarly to kind of the, taking a challenge and trying to turn it into something good, I had been commuting at that time when Catherine and I started Crit Club. I was commuting to teach at Purchase College, and I was commuting to teach at RISD, like, 3-4 hours both ways. I really wanted a job in New York, but hadn't gotten anything I'd applied for. And so I thought, I can just make my own place. And then also, meanwhile, I was seeing my students from Purchase and Brown University and RISD, like going to art openings, trying to meet people. They were sometimes they were like, I'm living in my mom's basement, and they look kind of pale. And I was like, oh my goodness, these brilliant artists are all anonymously alone trying to go to art openings, because everyone tells you network at art openings, but that's very
Yeah.
difficult to do, especially if you know
Yes.
zero people. How will you ever meet anyone?
Yeah.
So I wanted these brilliant artists that were my friends and that were my students to meet each other. I wanted to have a community and an art school that I could work with and for around me in New York City, so I didn't have to commute for a fourth job. And so it solved all these problems. It helped my students and friends. It helped my commuting issue where I wasn't going to get another faraway job. And I think it provided definitely a need in the art world. And Catherine's a great
Yeah.
curator as well. And she's very organized. She brought in all of these skills I just did not have. I wasn't very organized. I wasn't, I did curate actually too. And that was another way of building community for people. But yeah, I feel like Catherine's really continuing the project in a beautiful way. And I do hope if people are listening, if you're looking for feedback on your work or if you're looking for a group of artists, it's just such a warm, inviting place to meet new artists. And
Yeah.
I hope people sign up.
What are you currently teaching at NY Secret Club?
Oh yeah, so I'm currently teaching this class called the Studio Visit, where we're learning about studio visits and best practices for getting and giving studio visits. And the class has great tips for artists. I mean, some of the things that I've thought about as like great takeaways are, a lot of times artists want to share their work, and of course in a studio visit, but really in the first studio visit, it's more about a conversation. It's more about getting to know that other person. It's about sort of connecting with someone else, almost more than the work. And you were kind of saying this about podcasts, like it's more about the connection between two people, and to kind of think of that as the priority rather than like getting a show immediately or things like that. As also a pressure on first visits that almost never happens, that it's a long-term process, doing studio visits, getting to know new people. And that's just one of the many things I think people are learning in the class.
Yeah, I love that. I think the idea, how I see it, is like we need patrons for our work. And to find patrons, it takes time and it takes conviction for others to believe in who we are and what we do. It's just not what they see, but it's what they see in us. It's our story. It's how we present ourselves. It's so many things that, and also I feel like relationships help you yield way longer results.
Mm.
How I see it is, if you're not doing this for a shorter while, we're all making connections, and if we all take the time to build each other, support each other, learn about each other, invest in each other, we all will be able to move forward for a longer run rather than just seeking one opportunity, one show. I'd rather invest that time to, do a lot more with someone, even if that means I have to take it slow, if that means I have to invest way more time without expecting something in return immediately.
Exactly. That you're building a friendship, you're building community. And that's
Yeah.
sort of the philosophy, behind Crit Club too.
Yeah.
It's like all about making friendships with other artists and people in our world.
Lovely. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Hilary. It was so fun talking to you. I can't believe it's been 44
Oh
minutes
my gosh.
already.
I know. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that people can, if anyone's in London, check out my show. I'm going to be there. It's opening June 11th, coming up. Oh, I guess if this is released later than that.
Yeah, but you can still say it. If not, people can check it on your website. We'll still publish the details and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And people can find me on Instagram at Hilary L. Doyle and my website, which is hilarydoyle.com. And thank you so much for talking to me. One thing I always love about this podcast is you always bring up such interesting questions, and you always have this kind of heartfelt way of speaking in such a beautiful way. So thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you. I'm not letting you go. You're still up for the rapid fire.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's a rapid fire. Oh, I thought this was the end.
Yes.
Sorry.
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
I mean, that's okay, but I'm not letting you go before the rapid fire
for
okay. Sure.
Let's go for it.
So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, here we go. One thing you want to convey through your work in the arts.
One thing I want to convey through my work in the arts. Gosh, that's a big question. I think
quick.
Oh, I have to do it quick? Okay.
Yes.
Connecting with others in the broader art world is my goal.
Okay. What's that one word that describes you the best?
One word that describes me best. Gosh, I wish I had had this before. one word that describes me best. I would say I'm both shy and bold at the same time. You can be that,
Oh, wow.
I think.
Yes, you can be, for sure. If you could have a studio anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Gosh, these are such good questions. Anywhere. I do miss New York sometimes. So I think, maybe New York again, like a really big one. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That would be a dream studio. Your biggest source of inspiration?
I think everyday life is one of my biggest sources of inspiration, and Merlin Stone, who is one of my favorite authors. She wrote this book called When God Was a Woman, and I use it
Oh, wow.
all the time. I'm reading
I have
it
to check
constantly.
it out.
She's amazing.
Oh my God, I have to check it out. Okay. Who's your favorite woman artist from any point of time?
Oh gosh, this is a hard one too. Favorite woman artist. I can't really pick a favorite, but I'm gonna say Isabel Bishop, who painted the subway for a long time, and I just think not enough people know about her. She's great.
Yeah. Then I will link her work in the show notes and also add images of her work. It'll be interesting to see both of your work in the same place.
That would be nice.
Who's your go-to person when you're in trouble or in need of advice?
Oh gosh, go-to person when I'm in trouble. Need advice. I have my friend Meredith Islay. She's like my best friend from undergrad. She moved to New York with me when we didn't know anybody, and we worked in an art supply store, and I feel like I still call her for advice. I'll text her painting questions. She's awesome.
Oh, cheers to her. Okay, this is a little more than one word, so you're allowed. Okay, can you share one of your favorite moments as an artist, something that you really cherish, something that you keep close to your heart and you're grateful for being an artist? Anything, I'm sure there must have been one.
Oh my gosh. One moment as an artist. I think any moment where my brush is on the canvas is like my favorite moment. I don't know if I can think of other anything else.
No,
but
I
just
think
that
it's
moment when your brush is
the joy
on
of
there
making the work.
and you're listening to music, and it just feels very joyous. That's the one moment every day.
Yeah. If you were to meet younger Hilary today, what advice would you give her?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to quote Keisha Pierre-Lou Martin, who is one of my students, and she had this question. She had such a good answer for it, and I was like, yeah, that's what I would do too. So I'm just really going to say what she said, but this is hers. She said that she wishes that she told herself to enjoy life a little bit more and to maybe work a little less and just, find more life inspiration from joyous things in life. Because I think I painted like every weekend until like midnight every day and in all my spare time. So I just feel like maybe some more rest and fun things could be good. It felt like maybe it was too much in retrospect.
No, I absolutely.
So she's very wise.
That's such a great advice. Yes. Okay, shout out to an artist you're currently enjoying on social media.
Oh gosh, shout out to an artist I'm currently enjoying on social media. I really like Madeline Donahue's paintings and Celeste Rapone. Those are two artists that I just think are awesome. They don't know me, I don't think. But
no, absolutely doesn't matter. That's the point of social media, I think.
Yeah, when you said that, I was like, I have to pick someone that's not my friend because not my close friend.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, I have a lot of friends I would love to shout out to, but I was like, this should be someone that I don't know properly.
Lovely. Oh my God, thank you so much, Hilary. It was just so fun talking to you. It was such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for your honesty and your warmth.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. This was so great. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you like to plug in last time where people can
Oh,
find you?
oh yes. I, yes, you can find me at Hilary L. Doyle at on Instagram or hilarydoyle.com for my website. You can also find my work on the Tamer Grane website. Um, if you want to see the work from the show that might be closing soon in London, I'm going to be in a group show in a few months in a landscape show with Tamer too. So that would be another thing to check out.
Perfect.
I'm
I
also
will
going to
link
be.
all of these.
Oh, okay.
No,
um,
no, please go ahead if you have
oh,
more.
yeah,
More
yeah.
than happy.
There's also a group show at Mindy Solomon Gallery coming up. So that would be another
Lots
place
happening,
to
huh?
see it. I guess so. Just very lucky.
Lovely. Amazing. So I will link Hillary's Instagram website and any shows that are up by the time we publish this episode. So you can find all the details in the show notes and make sure you check her work out, support her, follow her, and always. I mean, we all love cheering for each other, and that's I think that's why we are all here. So thank you so much, Hilary. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you so much for your honesty and sharing your work and life with us. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me and Hilary in this episode. We had such a fun conversation, and I'm so glad I've had the pleasure to host her on the podcast. And so, if you also did enjoy this episode, I would love to hear from you. Share us on social media, tag us, share this episode with someone who could find this helpful. And most importantly, if you want to support the show, please take a moment and leave us a review. That's the best way you can support us, reach to a bigger audience, and for really, I think that's how we get paid for the work that we're doing. And I would love to hear from you. So share us a review on Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else that you listen to this podcast. And I'm always looking forward to hear from you. So social media, DM, email, just let us know what you think about, what you want further. And I hope you see me and you join me in the next episode. I'll see you then soon. Bye bye.